Hello friends. Excited to be back here with you guys for another episode of Clearly Focused. I'm Kaylee Ely, your host for today and every day, pretty much, of this episode. Today's episode's going to be pretty good. I have gotten actually a lot of questions about this in my DMs, and then I even have some of my associates and some other fellow photographers who have asked me kind of what my process is. If you've been listening to the show for a while, you know this is something that I'm always asking other people about too. It's just their process, their general, what's your step-by-step? Do you do this or do you not do this? I've heard of other people doing this. Do you do it? Am I weird that I don't do it? I'm just a little nosy Nelly. I like to know, right? So picture this. It's the beginning of 2024 and you're wanting your inquiry process to be much smoother for your clients this year. This is the episode for you to listen to then. This process can be applied to any niche that you do. So not just for wedding photographers. So if you are doing senior photography, family photography, whatever it is, keep listening because this process will work for you, I promise. So your inquiry form is basically your first impression to your clients. If it's too long, it might turn people away. If it's too short, you might attract the wrong kinds of clients who don't really align with your business. So it's important that you figure out what questions are integral, however you want to say it, to you and your business when you're starting the process of onboarding a client. This episode is going to go into some things to consider when you're setting up this inquiry form and maybe things you want to tweak. Even if you've been doing this for 10 years, it's always kind of cool to know what other people are asking. I recommend linking your contact form through a CRM like Honeybook, because then whenever you get an inquiry on your website, it's automatically going to populate a project for them with all of the information they entered, the date, the location, all that kind of stuff, where they found you. And it's just all going to be, it's just much easier to track leads this way, and all of the back and forth throughout the whole process is just made so much simpler by using a really good CRM. All of the files that you send them, all the links that you send them, you can have a scheduling system through Honeybook. You can, all of the conversations throughout this whole process are just all in the same spot, which is so cool to be able to just, instead of having to go back through text messages or emails or DMs, it's all in the same spot. Obviously, as long as you're communicating through Honeybook. Honeybook's my favorite. I've been using it forever. I have a code that gives you 50% off for your first year of Honeybook, so you can see for yourself how much you love it. It's going to be a super big game changer for you and your business. But there are other programs out there like Dubsado and Monday and that kind of stuff that do similar things. So, and even Unscripted has some of these options as well. So check them out. See what you got. But moving on to our 30 seconds of silence here, I want you to get cozy, grab a bev and a notebook, and just get yourself into the mindset of inquiries. Think about questions that you would like to be asked when inquiring with a photographer. Manifest all those bookings coming in because you're attracting new clients with this new inquiry form and streamlining the process, not just for them, but for you. All right, guys, so the types of sessions or weddings that you book can be heavily influenced just by your inquiry form. If you have lots of meaningful, lengthy questions, asking about where they met or wanting to know more about who they are, then clearly right from the beginning, your clients will be oh, she wants to know about us. Not just about our wedding day and where we're getting married and what day it is. She wants to know about us, and that's pretty cool. Some clients might not like that, but some clients will like that because they're oh, she's not just being give me the info, bye. So like I said, because sometimes they're lengthy, sometimes that can deter people from answering all those questions because they're just oh, there's 50 questions, I'm just not going to do that. But that could weed out people that might not be a good fit for you in your business if you are wanting to work with clients who are more intentional and care about things like that, especially if that's something that you value is knowing more things about them as a couple. Then you're going to want people who will want to answer those questions versus just having a short inquiry form, and then when it comes down to trying to get to know them, they don't want to answer questions very lengthily, and you're like, okay, maybe we're not a good fit because like I want to know the details, like give me the juicy details, people. It's also kind of going to show you that they truly value your time that they're going to be spending with you, and the time that you're going to be working on their stuff, like editing and planning their locations and all that kind of stuff. It's going to show that you care about them more than just like a paying customer, and they could resonate with that and they could absolutely love it. There are always clients out there like that. But on the other hand, it could completely turn away clients before the process even gets started, like before they even inquire with you, because they're going to see that and like I said, they're just going to like close the tab and go to the next photographer. So it depends on where you're at in your business and where you want to be at in your business. Because if you're at the point where you can't afford to turn away clients then that aren't a good fit, then maybe having a lengthier inquiry form is going to be a good thing for you, and it's going to help filter out those people who will either end up not booking or clients that you just won't enjoy the process with. So if you're a newer photographer, or if you're in a season of life where you're hungry for work and you just need to pay the bills, then we've all been there, and sometimes we go back there frequently. But then you can probably keep the inquiry form a little bit shorter. Does this mean that you don't get to know your clients on a deeper level? Absolutely not. It just means it's not going to happen right at the very beginning, not at that like handshake of the, hey, nice to meet you. You can ask all those same questions during the booking process, like on a phone call with them, or if you send them a questionnaire, but like even after they've booked, to get to know them a little bit more. So there's definitely ways for going about it regardless of how you want to do it, but I recommend trying it out one way and seeing if you start getting more clients that align with you or who give you more information up front, and if you like that process, and then later you can evaluate if you like receiving all of that information or if it's unnecessary at that point, and you can just adjust your inquiry form from there. The most common things you want to make sure you have on your inquiry form are like names, what type of session they're wanting to book, if there's a particular date or month that they're looking at, and a way to contact them, like an email or a phone number or both. So like obviously if it's a wedding, they're hopefully going to have the location, and most of the time people come to the photographer with the venue and the date already booked. But if it's just for a session, they might be like, oh, well, like we're going to be in town in May, or our anniversary is in August, or we like want to get our photos done in the fall, or something like that. So you can kind of ask for like a game plan, I guess, or like what's in their head right now. It's crazy to me that I see photographers out there that don't have a place for a date on their inquiry form, because like I said, if it's a wedding, they already probably know that, and I would want to know right away if I was available or not, rather than having to email them back and say like, okay, this is cool, but like when is it? And then end up being booked. And that's just like an extra step you had to do for absolutely no reason. So this also just kind of creates a clunky process for the client as well, because then they're going to want all the info in the first email, but like if you're not even available, you might not give them that. You just want to like know when the date is, right? So it's like including if you're available or not. They're going to want to know the pricing and all of that good stuff. Even if it's not for a wedding, like they could be traveling to your city, like I said earlier, and like only be there for certain days. And it's nice to know the window of availability. So if like from the get-go, right? Or even just knowing a general month or season helps you know, so that you can advise them like, hey, my fall books up really fast. So if you're wanting a fall session, like we need to get you on the books ASAP, because, or if you're going to be out of town, be on vacation, or if you're getting married or something like that. And you're basically just not going to be available. Like it's good to know when they're wanting to book. So having that date is key. Obviously, I have a spot for names for, it's tricky because I do a little bit of everything, so I didn't want to just put you and your boo, because sometimes like I do families, right, or branding, and there's not a boo. But I have their name, like the person who's filling out the inquiry form, and then I have like your love's name, and so that way people can put in their partner's name, or they can put in the names of their family members, or they put in their business name if it's for branding, that kind of stuff. And that's really fun. So I like to be able to know like who it is I'm working with. Otherwise you have to ask that awkward question like, cool, like Riley, thanks for inquiring with me, but like what's your fiance's name, or like what's your kid's name, what's your husband's name and your kids' names, like who am I going to be talking to on the day of the session? So it's just always nice to have that from the very beginning, just being like, it's this person and this person, or this person and their family, and these are the kids' names. Another thing that you can include on your inquiry form is a location. So I think that's also something that's not really necessary, but it's honestly nice to have. Like I said, if it's for a wedding, you can respond with some personal touch points, like if it's a venue that you photographed at before. If it's for regular sessions, or like if you just never want to go back there again, you can automatically be like, nope, I don't want to shoot at that venue. I'm just going to say I'm unavailable, or like we're not a good fit, and send it to somebody else. But if it's for regular sessions, it's nice to know that if they already have a place in mind, like if it's where they went on their first date, or if it's like their favorite thing to do together, or favorite restaurant or something like that, or if they're open to suggestions that you would provide to them, that they can really rely on you for that information or guidance. And you can put that in there like a first email and just say, hey, I know you're looking for a session downtown. I have the perfect spot for you. That's all you have to say. You don't really have to say where it is. Especially if they end up not booking you, then you kind of just gave them an idea to give to the other photographer. This is what my brain thinks, which isn't really that big of a deal because they're not working with you anyway. So what does it matter if you gave them the idea of where the location is? But I always just tell people, I'm like, oh, I've got a really great place in mind for your session. If they're like, we want something that's this kind of vibe, but we also want this or whatever. Anyways, there's another thing that you can include that I think some photographers are recently catching on to, is a place to include budget. So this isn't necessary again, but I have found that I really like knowing what people are expecting to pay, and especially like for photographers, whether it's for a session or for a wedding, it also helps me quickly realize if we're a good fit or not, because if they're below my starting price, I can just be like, oh, this isn't gonna work, or like I'm gonna have to give you a smaller wedding package if you want to stay in that price or something like that. But I don't think a lot of photographers have been doing this, or at least not for very long, because there's, again, that whole process of back and forth emailing where someone will inquire with you and then you send them the pricing and then you get ghosted because you're above their pay grade. That sounds insulting, but you know what I mean. That way, when you have an idea already of their budget, that when they inquire with you, that you can already kind of guide that conversation and just be like, oh, I'm a little bit out of your price range, like if you're willing to like spend $100 more, like we can work together or whatever. Or if it's, hey, what if they're willing to spend more? Hello. What if your starting wedding price is at like $4,000 and they put like $6,000? Well, then like you could totally, like obviously you fit within their budget. I'm not saying you have to change your wedding pricing just for that one person, but it's good to know that you're within their budget and this is a solid lead. This is a hot lead, as we would call it, right? So going beyond that is asking where they're at in the booking process. This way I can get an idea of where their head's at in the game. Like, are they just starting the process and they're looking for prices and they're not really sure? Or are they very interested but they need some more info? Or are they like full send the contract, where do I sign? And that, when people put that answer, that just gets me really excited because I can tell how eager they are to work with me, and that just like, I don't know, I just always am really pumped because then I'm excited about the project too, because they're just like, let's go, you know what I mean? So it's really nice to be able to put that on there and say, and just to, again, to get an idea of where their head is at, because if they're someone who clearly puts that they're just starting the process and that they're price shopping, or just needing answers to more questions, then you might follow up once or twice, but then like not chase that lead anymore and not waste any more of your time, because you know that they had just started the process. They're either still working on it, or they are realizing like, oh, this person is not on my budget, and that's okay because I told them we were just price shopping. So you really kind of also helps set your mental awareness up for what's going to happen down the line with a specific client, because you know where they're at in the booking process. So now getting into some optional things you can include on your inquiry form, which again, all of these are optional. I suggest them, and sometimes I suggest trying it at least to see if you like it or if you don't, but so none of these are like required. I mean, except for like a way to get in contact with them, obviously, like you need that, but moving on, you can ask some questions or leave a little space for them to tell you about their love story, how they met, what's their vision for the wedding or for the shoot, etc., all those things. I love when potential clients answer this question because I already get to know them a little bit in the inquiry form, and I can respond to their email with like, oh my God, I love that place where you met, or like my husband and I do weekly date nights at Mexican too, or Something like that. Like just being able to relate to them on a human level as well as being able to provide them with information on your services is pretty cool, because then you're saying like, oh, I read your email, I read your details, I know where you met, or I eat there too, or that's one of my favorite venues, or if they attach a Pinterest board for their vision of the wedding day or the shoot, then you can be like, oh my God, I love that vibe. Like here's a session I did that's similar to it, or something like that. You know, you're basically able to give them more information up front. So that's one thing. I also share a lot about my fur babies on Instagram and my books and stuff on social media. So I have a spot for them to tell me all about their fur babies, or a good book that they're reading, or a hobby that they love to do together, because I also recognize that not everybody loves fur babies or has fur babies. So those are like two of my important things that I do outside of photography. So I put it on my questionnaire because those are the things that I like. They're like kind of pillars in my brand. But I also want to know what other kinds of things they like to do. Like, do they like to go out and eat? Are they more homebodies and they like to try cooking new recipes at home? Do they like to go hiking, travel? Do they travel a lot? That kind of stuff. I like to include a spot on my inquiry form that asks about what draws them to my work and how they heard about me. So it's hard. Again, this is why I'm saying it's optional, because it's not necessarily important for you to know like what draws them to my work. For me to know what draws them to my work. Sorry, grammar is hard. But it is really nice, because I have to remind myself not everybody is a photographer, not everybody is an artist, not everybody knows the right words to use when talking about our work. But, sorry if you just heard my dog bark, he's on the patio and he wants to come inside, I guess. But anyways, they most of the time just put like, I like your colors, or like, I love your editing style, or like, you seem to capture raw emotion on a wedding day, like yada yada. That's great. I love knowing that stuff, because I know what it is that like I can again respond to that and just be like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you resonate with my editing style, or like with the types of images that I capture on a wedding day, because like obviously that's what you're going to see in your gallery. So it's nice that you can kind of get to know what it is that they like about your work, but sometimes it's not very like elaborate. So just don't get your hopes up for anything like crazy, unless it is somebody who just like knows what to say. I have had some people who've like brought tears to my eyes, but it's very rare. But also getting to know where people have heard about you. This is good information to know what you're doing well in your business. So like, did they hear about you from Instagram? Did they hear about you on Google? Did they hear about you on Pinterest? Okay, that means that those things that you're doing to increase your SEO is working or are working. And again, grammar is hard, y'all. It's like feedback for what's working and what people are noticing about your work before they even talk to you or get pricing and availability. They're just like already being like, this is why I specifically want to book you as my photographer. So that's pretty cool. You can include a little final spot for any more information that they want you to know. So sometimes people just say, nope, I'm excited to hear from you, or the boring like n/a for not available or not applicable, whatever. But sometimes people put really key information and useful responses in there that help me adjust what I'm going to say, or suggestions that I might make for them in the initial response email, and I can already solve a pain point that they might be having, which could be pivotal in making the sale or not. Imagine if they said something like, my husband is in a wheelchair, and your response could say, I know plenty of handicap accessible spots around the area. And they'll instantly feel so much more confident in their decision to book you, because you're already prepared and they haven't even like signed a contract yet, and you're already just like helping them out, right? Sometimes you learn a piece of information about them that's very relatable to you, that helps form a bond between you and this client or potential client, and you have a connection with them right off the bat. So that's going to be impressive to them if you be sure to include it in your response email. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that response email. So I recommend having a template that's like set up and ready to go, so that you can quickly respond to their inquiry. We all know that the longer we take to respond, the lesser the chance we have of booking them, because sometimes they're impatient and they book with someone else before you even have the chance to respond. And you don't want that. Nobody wants that. So having a template ready to go is handy, because it just makes this process a lot easier and a lot quicker. I have an inquiry response template that you can get when you purchase my email templates, along with like 29 others or something like that. But basically it has all the information that I need to give them, with a few spots for me that are kind of like left open so that I can go in and fill in any personal information that I need to respond to. So, you know, just saying like, hey, name, thank you for inquiring with me about shooting whatever it is, wedding, session, etc. Like I loved hearing about how you guys met, or what kinds of things you like to do together. This is something that I enjoy as well, or like I love shooting at that venue. So just kind of having in spots throughout the email that you can go back and just write more of those personal touch points from their inquiry, especially if you do have those questions that are like, where did you meet? What kinds of hobbies do you guys like to do together? That kind of stuff. So obviously you're going to want to hit any of those touch points that you can, anything personal they mentioned, and so that you can respond so your email doesn't feel generic or automated, because that's gross. Leaving a spot for things like that is necessary in your template, and I usually suggest it at the beginning and then like a little couple sprinkled here towards the end, just so that they know, like obviously if they make it to the end, then they're like, oh yeah, she didn't just like type something in the beginning and then just like send it. It was, you know, there's more at the bottom too, if they make it at the end. So there's a huge debate in the industry about if you should share your pricing in this email or not, just like sharing your pricing on your website or not. And I think they're similar, like my answers are similar. It's totally a personal preference. It's up to you. I personally go ahead and send them pricing, because if I were the client, I would want to receive all of the information as soon as possible. Like, yes, okay, they're available and they resonate with me, and this is how much it's going to cost. Cool, like let's do it. I think this eliminates like a ton of back and forth between you and the clients, and that is a huge thing in this industry, because I know so many people who are just like, man, like we went back and forth for forever, and like we emailed a million times and like nothing ever came of it, or like we couldn't figure it out, we couldn't set a time to talk, and it just like, I don't know, I would get really discouraged if that were me, because I would want it to be super easy and straightforward and easy to understand, you know? So by having all of the information that the client needs and sending it to them on the first email, it's like, boom, everything is in your hands now, right? So some photographers like to send their initial response without the pricing, and instead they like to get the client on a call where they go over the pricing and the process and they answer questions. I personally just don't like this method, because if you aren't in their budget, then you not only wasted your time, but theirs, and time is money, honey. So obviously you can kind of eliminate this if you do have that like spot in your inquiry form that says hey, what's your budget? And if they say $1,000 and your cheapest package is $3,000, then you can just simply respond with like, I'm not in your budget. If you didn't want to pursue it any farther, rather than imagine like if you didn't have that question on your inquiry form and then you respond and you're like, I'm available for your day, let's get on a call, and then you go through your whole spiel and you tell them your $3,000 and they're like, oh well, our budget was $1,000, so bye. All that time that you wasted trying to build a connection with them and get the sale is just like, it's gone, and you can't get that back. So I include a link to my pricing guide just for the ease of viewing across platforms and devices, and that way the client can immediately know that they can or cannot work with me based on their budget. Some people include a PDF, like attachment if you wanted to, or like Honeybook does brochures that you can flip through, which is also pretty cool if you have that set up. But I just have a link to my Canva guide, and that way I think it's easy to send. The reason I do this is because I think it's easy to send, like if they have to share their pricing with parents, or if they're sharing their prices with the partner, they can be like, here, like this is someone I'm looking at, like look at her work, look at her price, like how do you feel? So that's kind of why I do the link, because I just feel like it's a little bit easier, but I know things like the Honeybook brochures like look a little bit more professional. I have mine set up, I just don't use it. Is that sad? Okay, so I include a little bit of a snippet about why my photography is different, and this is really important because you do want to talk a little bit about yourself and like why someone should book you, because otherwise they're going to be like, okay, well, like, cool, you told me you're available and you told me your pricing and you told me that like we have the same like cat's name or something, whatever it is that they put in there, some kind of personal touch point, right? And you're like, but like, what makes you different? That's what the client is thinking now. They're like, you know, what is the reason that I should hire Kaylee Lee Photography over somebody else? So it's just a good way, again, to just kind of reiterate like why someone should book you over somebody else, or giving them more information about what your package is and what your service is going to provide for them. That way they can see just like a little bit more of your brand and they know what to expect from a session or a wedding with me. So after that, I also include a link to a consultation call. So this is something that I do for weddings, but you could do it for like if you have something that's a little bit more lengthier, like a process that you need to talk through, like if you do milestone sessions, or if you have a client closet and you just kind of want to go over the process of what that looks like for your client, then you can have a consultation call link, even if it's not just a wedding. But I use HoneyBook for this, which is great because it has a scheduler system built in. So I can go in and set my availability. Like I only want to take calls on Wednesday, or I'll take calls Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, whatever you want to set your availability as. But if you have a session scheduled in HoneyBook, it will automatically like block out that time. So you don't have to go in and manually enter every single session and wedding that you have if it's going to overlap with any of your time for consultation calls. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, like I said, it's just a good way for you guys to get to know each other. I can go over the process of what it looks like to work with me. I can get to know them. They can get to know me. We can make sure we're a good fit, because that is huge for a wedding day. But it's important overall to make sure you like your clients and that they like you, but especially for weddings, because it's just a big investment. So at the end of the email, I give them a little reminder that their date is not secure until a contract is signed and a retainer is paid. Dates are first come, first serve, so I can't hold it for them without that signed contract and paid retainer. And that way they know they just can't expect to work with me until things are official in that way. I did have a little with that, not for a wedding, it was just for a session. But the client was reaching out through Instagram DMs, and I told them multiple times to go through my website because I just kept like missing the messages. And it like literally 2 months go by. I'm not exaggerating. 2 months go by. Like we hadn't talked about like a location or a time or anything. It was just kind of like a date, right? Like, yeah, I'm available. And like, that's where we left it, right? And then like a week before the session was supposed to happen, he messaged me and was like, hey, we're still set. We're still good for this, right? And I was like, no, because I like did not send you a contract or a retainer. And like, yes, that's my fault because I should have done that. But like, it was because all we had decided on was a date, and like he didn't even send me his email or anything like that. Like nothing was secure. So we got it figured out. Don't worry. I know you're over there panicking. It's fine. I ended up having an associate of mine fill in, which was great. But it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is why I love HoneyBook, because things that don't go through HoneyBook get lost. So yeah, definitely love using that. And it's just easy to make sure that you have everything set up and squared away and you're all good to go. So off that train, I tell people to follow me on Instagram and TikTok so that they can get to know me like a little more, I was going to say unprofessionally, but that sounds wrong because I'm not unprofessional on TikTok or Instagram, but you know what I mean? Just like outside of like the emailing back and forth, like they get to see me on my stories, they get to see me on my reels and my TikToks, and they get to hear about what books I'm reading and that kind of stuff. So I tell them to go follow me there, and they can see more of my work, and it's just a different way for your clients to be able to connect with you, and it's great to establish a relationship with them on social media, liking their stories, reacting to their stories, commenting on their posts, that kind of stuff. I mostly only do that with brides, like bride and grooms, couples, or if it's like a family I've worked for multiple times. I always follow my clients because if they post photos that I took, I love to see them, and sometimes their pages are private and I can't see it unless I follow them, and they can't tag me unless I follow them. So I usually follow all my clients, and I'll try to like the pictures and comment on it, you know, if they post some of my work too. But that just is a good way, again, to just reconnect with them and check in and just remind them that like you're still there. So if they end up having another baby, or if they want to do a creative couple shoot, like I'm still here, let's work together. But anyways, back to the inquiry response email. All in all, you don't want the email to be too incredibly lengthy, but you don't want it to be too short either and just leave them hanging or wanting more. It's kind of like the inquiry form. You have to find what balance is right for you, and that might take a couple times, honestly, of like tweaking things here and there to seeing what gets you the most responses, what gets you the most inquiries, what questions people are skipping or just putting NA or whatever on your inquiry form and stuff. But they in my mind, your client should be able to walk away from that inquiry email like having everything that they need and knowing if they want to work with you or not. So it's definitely a fine line that you have to find. If you have a pricing guide that you include in this email, this is a great way to give them more information about you and your work. That way you can cut back on the length of the email because you have a little bit more kind of spread out through that guide. And you can provide the information that way. And it also provides a more visual experience for them to look at rather than just like a huge block of text in an email. So I also have a pricing guide available in my shop too, if that is something that you're looking for and something that you're wanting to implement a change in your business, because it's easy. The one I have specifically has all the text, all the copy written for you. All you have to do is pretty much plug in your images, obviously change your name in there, and like if you want to change a couple things, obviously you have to enter your pricing and stuff, but that's it. It's pretty much just like drop in your information and it's good to go and send out to other people. So that's pretty cool. You could literally start using it in like 5 minutes. So that's on my shop if you want to check it out. But other photographers have great resources like that too, or you can make one yourself for free on Canva, and that's pretty dope. But it's a nice option to have. So I've heard, this is the thing that I tried like 5 years ago. I heard if you put a question at the end of your email, people are going to be more likely to respond to you because you like asked them something and they don't want to leave you hanging. I think for a while that was working for me. And it's not like a vague like, do you have any questions for me? It's like, like, what do you think about this location? Or like, can you send me your Pinterest board? Or, just like a question that like has an actual answer, especially one that they might be excited to answer. But yeah, I think it worked for a little while. It's not really working for me now, so I just don't do it anymore. But mostly I think it's because I've changed my email to include pretty much all the information up front, so they don't really have any questions for me, at least not then. Like they might want to talk to me and get to know me or whatever, but from that initial email, they're already like, I'm good. Like you sent me everything, girl. I'm good to go. So you could give it a go and put a question at the end of your email if you wanted to. Especially if you find yourself being ghosted after your inquiry email, you could try putting a question at the end, but remember, you don't want to make this first email too long. So, I know a question is like usually pretty short, but just kind of keeping it in mind. So all in all, like I said, this inquiry form is kind of like the handshake to your business, and the inquiry email response that you're sending to your client after they inquire with you is like your handshake, like to them. I'm wording this terribly, but you know what I mean. Like they're extending their hands like, hey, I'm this person, nice to meet you, when they're filling out your inquiry form. And then you, by sending that inquiry response email, are putting out your hand and saying, hey, I'm this person, nice to meet you, let's work together. And so you when you have those awkward handshakes where you're just like, that didn't feel right, or like, man, that was a really firm grip right there, or like, oh, I like that handshake, I wonder if my handshake feels like that, you know what I mean? So like this is kind of like the digital version of that for a very terribly worded and used example, but you know what I'm saying. So you walk away from that handshake already with a feeling, right? So you want to make that not an awkward, clunky, leaving a bad taste in your mouth experience. You want to make it fun and easy. You want to make them remember you and want to come back to you and want to respond to you and want to work with you, right? Hopefully over and over and over again. So not just for the one time, but hopefully multiple times. So making sure that you are setting this up to give your client that experience, but not also yourself. You don't want to have a clunky, that was awkward, what am I doing kind of experience. So by setting this up properly, you're able to also give yourself that experience, not just the clients, because you'll be like, man, that was easy. It was quick. I felt really confident in that response. They're going to book me. Or, if they don't book me, then that's good because we were not a good fit. You know what I mean? Like you can walk away from that situation feeling very good. Very good. So that's all I got for you today. I hope it helps. But I hope your inbox is bustin' with all the new inquiries that you get after freshening up your inquiry form and your inquiry email. And until next time.